Rifkin.
Welcome to Rome. I give you the floor.
Buongiorno, good morning, everybody. Madam President, good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you. GDP is slowing all over the European Union, all over the world. Productivity is slowing all over the European Union, all over the world. Unemployment is high in the European Union and all over the world. What do? In the last 50 years, the EU has owed its success to a series of bold economic, social, and political initiatives that at each stage has taken Europe into a new journey. It started with the coal and steel community and the Euratom project to create an economic space. The Maastricht Treaty created a political union. The euro created a monetary union. The geographic extension of 28 states created a continental union. The 2020 formula created a sustainable plan for an ecological society. But now, frankly, the EU is in limbo. What's required now is a new vision for the European Union that can take us on the next stage of the European journey. And that vision is now unfolding. It's called a smart, green, digital Europe. And this build out of the smart, green, digital Europe, this infrastructure is going to engage every industry in all 28 member states. It's going to bring millions and millions of people back to work for 2 generations to build the infrastructure. It's going to help democratize economic life across the EU and partnership regions. It's going to create a more ecological society for our children. Now we need to get there. To understand the crisis and the opportunity, we need to take a look at how the great economic paradigm shifts in history occur. If we know how they occur, we're going to get a roadmap here on what the leadership in this room can do, because you're right here, and every legislature in Europe, what the leadership can do to help chart this next journey for Europe and hopefully the world in the 21st century. When we study the 7 great economic paradigm shifts in history, they actually share a common denominator. At a moment of time, 3 defining technologies emerge and converge to create what we call in engineering a general purpose technology platform. That's a fancy way of saying a new infrastructure that just changes the way we organize economic life. What are these defining technologies that create the new paradigms? Number 1, new communication technologies to more efficiently manage economic activity. Number 2, new sources of energy to more efficiently power economic activity. And number 3, new modes of transportation to more efficiently move economic activity. If you look at all the value chains of the 7 great economic paradigms in history, it's the ability to create new technologies to manage, power, and move economic life across the value changes. That changes the equation. It makes a new world. Let me give you an example. You have to sit down with a photographer. You have to go in the back. Sorry, I'm used to a classroom. 19th century Britain, first industrial revolution. The Brits took us from manual printing to steam power printing. Big leap forward in communication. Then they introduced the telegraph. These communication technologies in Britain converged with cheap coal, powered by a British invention, the steam engine. Then the Brits put the steam engine on rails and created locomotives and national transportation. Communication, energy, transport. 20th century, the United States, Second industrial revolution, communication, energy, and transport again. Centralized electricity, especially the telephone, later radio and television. Those new communication technologies converged with cheap Texas oil, powered by an internal combustion engine. And then Henry Ford put everybody on the road with cars, buses, and trucks, national transportation and logistics system. The second industrial revolution took us through the 20th century. It peaked in July 2008. That's when Brent crude oil hit $147 a barrel on world markets. And when that happened, the prices for everything we purchase became so prohibitive that purchasing power shut down in every country that month. Because everything is pegged to fossil fuels in the second industrial revolution communication, energy, and transport platform. Our pesticides, our fertilizers, our construction materials, our pharmaceutical products, our synthetic fiber, our power, our transport, our heat and light, all moved by fossil fuels. So when oil goes over 100 a barrel, all the other prices go up. At 147 a barrel, purchasing power shut down, and that was the economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial markets 60 days later was the aftershock. We are now beginning to see the long 30-year endgame for a second industrial revolution based on centralized telecommunications, powered by fossil fuel and nuclear energy, and moved by a dumb road and rail internal combustion transport system. We've exhausted the productivity of that system. And that's why when economists lament and they say, why is productivity waning everywhere in the world? That platform from the 20th century is exhausted. We have aggregated energy efficiency at 13%, which is 85% of productivity. Nothing's changed in 20 years. The spike in oil was the wake-up call. Let me share an anecdote. When Chancellor Merkel came into office in 2005, she asked me to come to Berlin in the first few weeks of her new government to help her address the question of how to grow the German economy on her watch. When I got to Berlin, the first question I asked the Chancellor is, Madam Chancellor, how do you grow the German economy or the European economy or the global economy in the last stages of a great energy era where the technologies based on those energies have exhausted their productivity? I don't care what country you live in, China, France, the United States, Senegal, any country that's still operating on this platform 20 years from now, the 20th century second industrial revolution platform, will never, ever move their economies. You can have austerity and market reforms and labor reforms and fiscal reforms, all of which I think are fine. But if you're operating on that old platform in 20 years from now, you are out of the game. So that first day with the Chancellor, I outlined a new convergence of communication, energy, and transport, a third industrial revolution, a digital revolution. At the end of the day, in the evening, the Chancellor privately turned to me and she said, Jeremy, I want this third industrial revolution. I want it for Germany. We will have this in Germany. We are beginning to see a convergence, again, of communication, energy, and transport. The communication internet, we all have our smartphones. The communication internet is now converging with a digitalized, distributed, renewable energy internet and a digitalized, automated, GPS-guided, and soon driverless transport and logistics internet to create three digital internets, a super internet, communication internet, energy internet, transport internet, all digital. These three internets are the kernel for a new platform. That platform's the Internet of Things. Already, billions of sensors are being attached to every single machine and device across the value chain of the economy. We have sensors in the agricultural fields, sensors in the factories, in the retail stores, in smart homes, in smart vehicles, and they're sending data in real time on the economic activity, these sensors all across the value chain, to the insurgent communication internet, the incipient energy and transport internet. This is the digitalization of everything. By 2030, we will have 100 trillion sensors connecting every machine so they can talk to every other machine and every other human being to help us more efficiently manage power, move economic activity, communication, energy, transport. On the upside here, this is a huge leap forward for the human race. We can begin to see the opportunity of the entire human race up on the Internet of Things platform for a third industrial revolution, directly engaged with each other, eliminating all the middlemen, all the inefficiencies, all of the inequalities that kept production from consumption. And we can begin to think as a human family and all of our diversity engaged in economic life. Now, this immediately raises big questions. Every machine talking to every machine and every human being. How do we protect network neutrality? How do we ensure governments or industries don't purloin this Internet of Things and privatize it for commercial and political ends? How do we ensure data security? How do we protect personal privacy? How do we guarantee creative content? How do we thwart cybercrime and cyber terrorism and the disruption of the system? These are heady political questions that will engage legislators and the public for generations to come throughout this century. These will be the defining political agenda for generations to come. But let's assume right now, this morning, that we will be able, you will be able, with legislative oversight, to address these issues. Here's what this Internet of Things, this digital Europe, is going to allow the European Union and the world. We have 3 billion people connected to the Internet. Pretty soon everyone's going to be connected. I'm working with the new leadership in China. I was just with the Vice Premier Wang Yang. We've been visiting several times. He said, Jeremy, we now have a $25 smartphone. So if you're making $2 a day, you're going to be connected in the next 10 years. So every one of us that's connected to the Internet now with our smartphone, we can go up on this Internet of Things that's emerging. All of us are going to have a transparent picture of everything going on in the economic life of society for the first time in history. Even big companies didn't have this information. This democratizes the playing field. This means anyone with a smartphone has the data at their disposal that every big enterprise in the world has at nearly zero marginal cost. So everybody here in this room has a value chain, whether you're an individual, a family, a small business, a large company, or a government. What that means is all day long in our value chain, we're marshaling economic activity, we're moving it around, we're helping produce goods and services, we're consuming economic activity, we're recycling it. That's the value chains. So if you're a small or medium-sized enterprise or a nonprofit, a cooperative, or a big business, or a government, you can go up on this emerging Internet of Things platform and cut out your swath of the big data that you care about in your value chain coming back from the sensors for communication, energy, and transport. Take your swath of data for your value chain, for your institution, and use your own analytics to mine that data. Create your own algorithms with your own apps. It will be simple. And with those algorithms and apps, you on your value chain can, in real time, moment to moment, with your analytics, dramatically increase your aggregate efficiencies at every step of conversion on your value chain 24/7. And the reason you want to do that is aggregate efficiency is 85% of productivity. Aggregate efficiency is the ratio of potential to useful work at every single conversion on the value chain of life. So with their data you cut out, and your analytics, and your algorithms and apps, every single person in the world, every institution can dramatically increase aggregate efficiencies, increase their productivity, reduce their marginal cost, the cost of producing an additional unit of a good or service, to so low, we create a digital Europe, the most competitive market in the world. Some of the marginal costs are going to become so low, they're going to head towards zero, meaning goods and services will be free. They'll be abundant. They'll no longer be in the market. They'll be shared in the new sharing economy. Now, we're hearing a lot about the sharing economy. What is the sharing economy? Capitalism's giving birth. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. Capitalism's giving birth. It's an old parent, it's a young baby. And it's giving birth to a progeny called the sharing economy. This is not just a part of capitalism, it's a new system. It's the first new economic system to enter onto the world stage since capitalism and socialism in the 19th century. So the sharing economy is young, it's unformed, but it's a remarkable historical departure. Now, in this case, the parent, capitalism, has to nurture this child, the sharing economy. It's its creature. It has to let it grow, develop, mature, find an identity. But if you're a parent, you know the child transforms the parent. In this case, capitalism is going to be fundamentally changed by the digitalization of the economy that allows for the sharing of some free goods and services. Capitalism will be here in the mid-century, but it's no longer going to be the exclusive arbiter of economic life. It's going to have to share the stage with its grown-up child, the sharing economy, and our young people will have two choices. It's already starting. They can choose exchange in the capitalist market, where the marginal costs still allow for profits. There'll be plenty of that. But they're also going to be able to share on the collaborative commons and produce free goods and services for each other. It's already happening. It's the digitalization, this is important, of communication, energy, and transport that makes this happen. Digital Europe is not simply free Wi-Fi, broadband, and big data. If you think that's it, we're misunderstanding this revolution. It's the digitalization of every aspect of the economy, and at the center, how we manage, power, and move economic life. We've already seen the impact of near zero marginal cost on the first of the three internets. The communication internet's here. It's 25 years since the World Wide Web. We have 3 billion people now who are prosumers on the web. We still have sellers and buyers. We still have owners and workers. That's not going away. We have 3 billion people with a new category called prosumers. They are producing and sharing on the World Wide Web goods and services for each other at near zero marginal cost for free. They've left the market. Right now, as I speak to you, there are millions of people on the web this morning who are producing and sharing their own music with everyone else at zero marginal cost. If you share your music with one person on the web or a billion, it's still near zero, the cost. We have young people producing and sharing their own news blogs, their own social media. They're producing the education of the world through Wikipedia. They're producing and sharing YouTube videos, no copyrights, with each other, creating new entertainment. And they're taking massive open online college courses taught by the best professors. They're getting college credits, zero marginal cost. If you're a professor, $10,000 fixed cost for the video. Then if you send it to one student or a billion students, the cost is near zero. Some of the biggest vertically integrated industries of the 20th century have gone down in 15 years since Napster, file sharing Napster music. The music industry is a shadow of itself. Television has shrunk. All the kids are producing and sharing entertainment on YouTube. Newspapers and magazines have gone out of business. I'm in book publishing, 45 years. My new book, The Zero Marginal Cost Society, which I hope you all will read, Pirate Bay had my book out before my publishers, and they even had it ranked before Amazon. You can't beat these kids. This is a revolution. We are democratizing entertainment, news, and knowledge. But at the same time, remember I said capitalism's giving birth and has to adjust to its child? We have seen whole industries disrupted. But we have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of new capitalist enterprises and nonprofits emerge on the communication internet to create these shared sites, to manage the commons, and to create the applications. In industry, we thought there'd be a firewall, that while the zero marginal cost phenomena would impact the communication internet and the virtual world, it wouldn't cross over to the physical world of bits of atoms. We thought there'd be a firewall. That firewall has now been breached, as I made clear in the book. The communication internet is now converging in Germany and Denmark and now China. In the last 12 months, China has now followed the lead of Germany. The communication internet is converging now with an energy internet and an automated transport and logistics internet to create an Internet of Things platform, hopefully for digital Europe, on your watch as you legislate this in. We now have broken the firewall, and we now see in Germany millions of people who are producing their own green electricity right now at near zero marginal cost. We're going to democratize energy across the world with renewables in the next 25 years, and now we're seeing the very beginning of a shift to zero marginal cost in transportation and logistics with analytics and driverless transport coming. Let's look at Germany since the chancellor's come in. Germany is now 27% solar and wind electricity. It'll be 35% solar and wind electricity before 2020. It will be 100% all renewable energy by 2040. Why? It's the fixed cost here. The fixed cost of your solar panels and your wind turbines and your geothermal heat pumps. The solar and wind technologies have been on an exponential curve for 20 years. People just don't know about it, just like computing. Now, I'm by far the oldest human being in this room. I'm a World War II baby. And when I was a kid, computers cost millions of dollars. We didn't anticipate the Intel chip, Moore's Law. Every 2 years, we were able to double the capacity, half the cost of computing. Now the computer is $25. We've had a similar curve in solar and wind, and everyone in the industry knows where the wind's blowing, no matter what the public debate is. A solar watt, one solar watt, cost $78 to generate in 1977. $78 for the watt. It's 36 cents this morning. It's heading to zero. It's on an exponential curve. And so while everyone says that we're not ready for distributed renewables, and you can't concentrate them, they have to be distributed everywhere, there are power companies in Europe and North America this morning who have bought and are buying long-term 20-year contracts for solar and wind, not the old fuels, right now, for 4 cents a kilowatt hour because they know the exponential curves. We can measure them. It's the marginal costs that are interesting, though. In Germany, once you put on your thin film, your solar panel, your wind turbine, your geothermal heat pump, the marginal cost right now in Germany is near zero for that energy. 27% of the energy now in Germany is nearly free. The sun does not send a bill over Germany. The wind is not sending a bill over Germany. The geothermal heat coming up from the ground is not sending a bill in Germany. It's near zero marginal cost once you pay the fixed cost. Now, we're going to have to lay out the infrastructure, and those fixed costs don't come cheap. There are 5 pillars to the energy internet to digitalize it. And as I said at the EU over the years, you have to put all 5 pillars in. 1, feed-in tariffs to get early adoption so you can get lots of people to want to sell back to the grid for premium. You can phase them out in less than 20 years. We've seen it now in Germany and Denmark. Pillar 2, you have to retrofit all your buildings, homes, offices, and factories to make them efficient before you put the technologies on. Because if you turn them into micro power plants and the buildings are leaking, you get nothing. Pillar 3, we have to put in storage because these technologies are intermittent. The sun isn't always cooperating. The wind doesn't always cooperate. The storage is there, it just hasn't been incentivized in scale. We have hydrogen, advanced batteries, capacitors, water pumping. We have them all. We have to incentivize them. Pillar 4, we have to digitalize the electricity grid, put in the advanced meters so that millions of players can send electricity back and forth to deal with peak and base loads. Pillar 5, we have to put in millions of charging stations. Wherever there's a parking meter, a charging station. Plug in your vehicle to the grid, electric and fuel cell, get electricity, or sell yours back. Germany's done very well in Pillar 1 and 2. Lots of people producing electricity. They've retrofitted and equipped 1 million buildings. They haven't done Pillar 3. They got to do it this year, storage. They haven't moved aggressively on Pillar 4, the advanced meters. They're doing okay on the charging stations. I'm working with Germany. I'm in conversation with Sigmar Gabriel. And just 2 weeks ago, Sigmar Gabriel hosted, and Frank Steinmeier, the foreign minister, hosted a global conference. I joined the two of them. We laid this out. We had 61 countries there. This is happening. But even little Denmark is as far along, believe me, which shows you that any country can do this. Who's producing the electricity in Germany? Millions of small players, farmers, consumers, small and medium-sized businesses. They've created electricity cooperatives. They all got low-interest loans from the banks. The banks were happy to give the loans because they knew you would pay back with a premium and with the energy savings. Everyone got the loans. The government didn't have to do this. And now we have millions of small players in Germany producing their own energy. What happened to the big 4 power companies? And I was with them just this weekend in Germany. We had 60 CEOs in the room. We have E.ON, EMBW, RWE, and Vattenfall. What happened to them in the last 10 years is what happened to the music companies. It's what happened to the newspapers, the magazines, the book publishers. They're out of the game in terms of generating the new electricity. They're producing 7% of it. They were ideally suited for centralized energies, these big global power companies, because they were vertically integrated so they could create really good economies of scale. They really were good. But the new energies are designed to be ubiquitous, but they fall in small amounts everywhere. The sun, the wind, the geothermal heat. They actually favor small cooperatives, electricity cooperatives, who can scale millions of small players, and the amount of energy you get distributed dwarfs little teeny nuclear power plants, little teeny coal-fired power plants, when millions of small players are generating, storing, and moving electricity. This is the democratization of energy. This is power to the people. It's millions of small players today. I will guarantee you, short of a catastrophe we don't know about, in 10 years from now, in your countries, millions of people. In 25 years from now, much of the human race, at very low fixed cost, is going to be producing their own green electricity, are guaranteed, because of the exponential curves. It's going to be as cheap as smartphones in every single developing and developed country within 25 years. We see the curve. That exponential curve is not leaving us. The question is, will we be there with the game or behind the game in the EU? This is now happening. Does that mean that's the end of the power companies? No, we gave them a new business model. The new business model, remember I said capitalism has to adjust to this new sharing economy. The new business model, not tomorrow, but over 30 years, you have to make a long-term transition. Not tomorrow, but over 30 years. And your new job will be to sell less and less electricity. You'll make more money by selling less electricity. The electricity companies will create partnerships with thousands of institutions, homes, offices, factories, and they will manage the data and the analytics of everybody's value chain. And the electricity companies will use that data and analytics to create algorithms for thousands of institutions to help them increase their efficiencies across their value chain, increase their productivity, reduce their marginal cost, and guess what? Those thousands of institutions will share their productivity gains back with the power company. It's called performance contracting. E.ON's moving that way. And I should say in France, where my global team is now doing, some of you know the layout for Nord-Pas-de-Calais, the industrial region of France. It's 4 billion euros a year, 20 years. EDF has joined us. ERDF has joined us. GRDF has joined us. All the major French companies have joined us. They're not leaving the second industrial revolution, but they're beginning to create the portfolio for the third industrial revolution. It's digital Europe. Communication. Now we digitalize energy. And finally, we digitalized transport. The car was the centerpiece of the second industrial revolution. We built the entire global economy based on the car. But the GPS guidance on the logistics transport internet has changed the game. Now young people with their smartphone can go up on the communication internet, and if they want an automobile, it switches them to GPS, transport and logistics, and they locate a driver within 90 seconds, and PayPal pays. The young generation's moving from ownership of vehicles to access to mobility. That's grandma and grandpa. Ownership are two cars sitting in the garage. Starting with the millennial parents and their children and grandchildren, they're never going to own cars again. You're going to see that curve go down over the next 30 years. Owning vehicles will be a hobby. And the reason they're doing this, it's more convenient, it's easier, it's cool, it's the digital generation, it's digitalizing transport. For every car shared, 15 cars are eliminated from production. Now, Larry Burns, some of you remember, was the executive vice president of General Motors till 5 years ago. He just did a study. It's in the book. He looked at a middle-sized city, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and said, we can eliminate 80% of the vehicles right now with the automated transport and logistics car-sharing internet, the sharing economy. Now, think of what Larry Burns, former number 2 at GM, just said. 80% of the vehicles, we can get rid of them now with the new digitalized transport and logistics internet. We have 1 billion cars, buses, and trucks all over the world choking us in traffic. And they're the number 3 cause of climate change. Number 1 is buildings. Number 2, which no one seems to want to ever talk about, is beef production and consumption and agriculture, which is 1/3 of global warming. Even Al Gore won't bring up the subject. I don't even see it in legislatures. Number 2 is shameful, is agriculture, beef production and consumption. Number 3 is transport. If Larry Burns is correct, we're going to eliminate 80% of the vehicles over the next generation. The other 200 million vehicles will be electric. They'll be fuel cell. They'll be operating by near zero marginal cost renewable energy across continents. And they'll be driverless within 10 to 15 years on automated systems. Does that mean the end of the big car companies? No, but they have to change their model to accommodate the new child, the sharing economy. They're going to sell millions of automobiles in the next few years, but as that curve goes down, what's their new mission? They're going to erect and manage the automated transport and logistics internet. They're going to be the Facebooks and Googles of this, just like the power companies are going to manage the energy internet. And the way they'll make money is by helping manage the logistics across the system. If they don't do it, there's lots of other companies that would like to do it. The ICT companies will do it, or the electronics companies. It's the same with the electricity transmission. If the power companies don't do it, the ICT, the electronics companies, construction, there's all sorts of industries that would like to do this. It's going to be a race to how we transform capitalism so it can manage the communication internet, the energy internet, the transport internet, so that the capitalist system can work hand in hand with the sharing economy. What does this mean for traditional industries? If your country can begin to lay out this infrastructure and plug and play into this for communication, energy, and transport at low marginal cost, think of what happens to manufacturing in your country. It's called 3D printing. Now we're going to digitalize manufacturing to connect into the digitalized communication, energy, and transport internet. We've got several million kids now, startup companies, all sorts of enterprises. They're 3D printing. All open source, sharing the software, zero marginal cost. And you know what they're using for their filament? Garbage. Recycled plastic, paper, and metal objects. The cost is near zero, just collect. And they're beginning to power their 3D printers with their own solar and wind electricity off-grid at near zero marginal cost for the printing. And they're beginning to use electric vehicles to send their 3D printed products to market with near zero marginal cost energy from their microgrids. And in 10 years from now, those vehicles are going to be printed with redistributed recycled materials at low marginal cost. The Italians have come up with the first commercial vehicle. It's called the Stratus. It's beautiful, Italian design, you'd think. And it's being produced now. So, President Obama wants every high school to have a 3D printer, but I can tell you in 10 years from now, every country in this room, all your kids are going to go to first grade with a little $20 smartphone in their knapsack and a little $20 3D printer, no more Lego toys. In the next 10 years, it's going to be that cheap. And they're going to be Skyping in global classrooms, every single kid, and they're going to become as savvy in creating the next generation of manufactured products as their parents, the millennials, were savvy in creating virtual goods. Does this mean the end of manufacturing? No. But increasingly, the big global manufacturers will work with small and medium-sized enterprises because they can more efficiently scale the manufacturing. And they will help aggregate the networks and market the distribution channels. It's a revolution. Where does this leave us? The first question probably going through the minds of the legislators here is, how do we pay for this? The money is there. I've been in a series of meetings with Mr. Juncker's commission, the vice presidents, the commissioners, Martin Schulz, the leadership in the parliament. They're all asking where's the money, and I say the money's absolutely in front of you. The European Union in 2012 spent $741 billion in infrastructure, public and private commitment, in a really bad recession year. Every country in this room, you are spending huge amounts of money every year, public and private, on infrastructure, right now. The problem is where the money is being invested. You're investing it in new old, meaning you're investing it in the old 20th century platform of centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel nuclear power, internal combustion transport on dumb road and rail, where we have optimized at 13% aggregate efficiency 20 years ago. There's not a country in this room that's going to move forward and create new opportunities for industry and employment as long as you're throwing all of your money into that old platform. If we simply reprioritize the investment, so 25% of what you're going to spend anyway in your member state goes to the new platform being laid out to digitalize communication, energy, transport, manufacturing, you're there in 25 years. Reprioritize. Do not keep throwing the money into the old system. Let it be stabilized, but move some of it to the new system. That requires legislative oversight. That requires codes, regulations, standards, and operability. That requires the legislatures in this room to take charge and lead, provide a roadmap for all of your communities across your countries in the EU. What does this mean for industry? Every industry will be engaged in this build-out. Telecom companies, cable companies, electricity power and transmission companies, ICT, consumer electronics, transport and logistics, manufacturing, life sciences, and retail, they all have to be engaged in this infrastructure build-out for 40 years. This is going to put millions of people back to work, and it can be tomorrow morning in every region. You just have to make the choice. We have to, in every country here in the EU, transform the entire building stock of your country. We have to refurbish and retrofit every home, office, and factory because we can't put the new renewable technologies on these buildings and make them into power plants if they leak. They converted 1 million buildings in Germany. They had to retrofit every one of them. This will keep the construction industry in your country engaged in every region for 40 years. In Nord-Pas-de-Calais, we're doing 1 million buildings over the next 25 years. That is a lot of employment for semi-skilled professional labor to retrofit, get them efficient, and you immediately pay back with the energy savings. You can't lose on the financial loans from the banks. You can actually measure the savings after the retrofit, and you can pay with the savings. There is no loss. Then we have to take every country here and move your electricity grid from dumb to smart and from servo-mechanical. They're shameful, they're 70 years old, and we have to make them into digitalized energy internets. Who's going to lay down all that underground cable? Semi-skilled and skilled labor. Then you need industries, electronics, ICT. All these industries have to be engaged with the transmission companies to make this happen. Who's going to install all the advanced meters in every building? You're not going to have robots putting the installation of these meters in every single building yet. That doesn't exist. Then in every country here, we have to take your transportation grid and move it from internal combustion to electric and fuel cell, and from dumb to smart road, rail, and water. Who's going to put in the millions of charging stations? Every parking meter has to have a charging station. That's a lot of unskilled, semi-skilled labor. Who's going to lay down the sensors for all the smart road, rail, and water? That's a lot of skilled labor. So we have the opportunity here now to move into a smart, green, digital Europe. Communication, energy, and transport, digitalize them. Then with sensors, make possible the complete digitalization of the economy, so a generation of digital young people growing up can access, create new opportunities, create the new businesses of the 21st century. Last thought, and the most important thought of all for me. There's an elephant in the room. And I'm so terrified about what's happening here. Although the book only has half a chapter on this, what's really the problem here, while we sit here day to day with all of our nonsense in the world, is that the human race may not be here in a century from now. I never thought I would say something that sounds so over the top, so melodramatic, but we may not be here. I've been engaged in climate issues since 1980 and the energy issues since 1973, and I got it wrong. How many years is that? 40 years? I kept thinking we had more time. I didn't anticipate, nor my colleagues, the feedback loops that we couldn't model. And every time we see a feedback loop we couldn't model, it moves 10 more feedback loops instantaneously. Here is the issue at stake, and this is why I wanted the opportunity to speak to the leaders in every parliament in Europe, because this is where this is going to happen. What's terrifying about climate change, it's never explained. It changes the water cycles of the earth, and that's what's going on. It is frightening. We're the watery planet. We have developed our ecosystems on Earth over millions of years based on the cloud regimes and the water cycles of the Earth. For every 1 degree that the temperature goes up on this planet from industrial climate change, we're now 2 degrees, what's happening is the heat is forcing more precipitation from the ground into the atmosphere more quickly. We are getting more concentrated water events all over the world. More blockbuster winter snows come to the Northeast in the U.S. last winter. More dramatic spring flooding come to Central and Eastern Europe. More dramatic summer droughts. We're out of water in California, out. Pakistan's out of water, Sao Paulo's out of water. We are seeing more Category 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes from the water cycles devastating low-lying countries, and the feedback loop is moving much quicker than we ever thought. Our ecosystems simply cannot catch up to the runaway water cycle from climate change. That's what you need to tell your constituents as legislative leaders. Then they'll know why this is terrifying for their kids. And they can see it in real time everywhere, all year round. And we're only in 2015. What does this have to do with smart, green, digital Europe, the Internet of Things, and a third industrial revolution for communication, energy, and transport? This plan, all of which is happening somewhere right now, it needs to be scaled, none of it's academic. This plan is the only plan I know that gives us any hope, if we still have time, to address climate change. Everyone's going to December to the Paris climate talks. I'll be in Paris talking with the government leadership tomorrow. And it's going to be a disaster. Because every country is going to those talks in Paris. Their economies are contracting, and then they're being told they need to have benchmarks for CO2 emissions and efficiencies, et cetera. And they see these as punishments because their economies are contracting. What's missing from this global debate is the new economic vision, a new game plan that can move the economy, move industries, move jobs, and at the same time dramatically move us out of a carbon-based society. Then the benchmarks are goals, not punishments. Zero marginal cost is the ultimate metric for measuring ecological footprint. Because if we can, all of us, go up on the Internet of Things platform, all of us, and every day with our analytics and apps find ways to dramatically increase our aggregate efficiencies, it means we're using less of the earth because we're using it more efficiently. That's why we can reduce the marginal cost. We're using less of the rare earths, less of the fuels, less of the metals. That's why we call this a reduction in marginal cost. Then if what we do create, whether it's in the capitalist market or the sharing economy, then we share it. Share the vehicles, share the homes with Airbnb and couch surfing, share the toys with your kids on toy sharing websites, share the tools. Then all of us are sharing over and over again in a circular economy, and none of the things we do produce at low marginal cost goes to the landfill. That's the sharing economy. It's emerging in every country in the world right now, this morning. So we have the opportunity now in Europe to do something. Here is the memorandum I prepared for President Juncker. You have it in your desk. It's 8,000 words. And it's a compilation of all the best practices of how we can do this. It isn't mine, it's all of yours from things that we've seen go on around Europe and the world. Mr. Juncker has seen this. He said to me, I just got a recent correspondence, he said, I read every word of every sentence over and over. This is where we want to head, digital Europe. I've met with the leadership in the EU Parliament. I've been meeting with some of your heads of state. This is where we need to head, and here is the body right here in this room. I don't know how much to plead, but here are the legislative leaders in the 28 member states of this continental union. And I know it's difficult to think big vision and to lay out game plans because every day you have fires and fires to put out. But you need to free yourself, come together collegially across the union, find ways in each country to lay out a roadmap for a digital country, and then find ways to integrate it across the EU, because here is your big golden goose. And here I'll tell you, you've got a golden goose and you're wasting it, you're not feeding it. There's 500 million people in this union. There's 500 million additional people in your partnership regions in the Mediterranean, North Africa. That's 1 billion people. It's the biggest market in the world. Create a smart, green, digital Europe. Forget that it's just broadband and Wi-Fi. That's nonsense. It's all three, communication, energy, and transport, and lead the world into a more democratic ecological society. Bring out the legislation. Let other countries see what you're doing. Put in the roadmaps. If you don't, let me say, and this is a good thing, China's moving. I was quite surprised. I had not done any dealings in China, but the new premier, Premier Li, when he came into office, put out his biography. And up front, in the first few paragraphs, he said he was a fan, had read The Third Industrial Revolution, a book that I wrote a few years ago, and he'd instructed the central government of China to begin to move on this Third Industrial Revolution plan that I'm laying out to you. I've been there on official visits, spending time with the Vice Premier, the Reform Commission, and let me show you how fast China's moving to the German model. After my first visit 2 years ago with the Vice Premier, the China National Grid chairman announced 11 weeks later, $82 billion upfront commitment in the next 4 years, starting this year, to lay out a digitalized energy internet across China. It just started, so that everyone in China can produce their own solar and wind and send it back to the grid starting this year. And they're laying out an Internet of Things platform, communications in, Alibaba attention, and now they want to move to automated transport and join Germany and Europe. Last thought, if you want to think really visionary, you're reading about the Silk Road, the Eurasian Silk Road. Chairman Xi and Premier Li say, why not a new Eurasia Silk Road? The first idea was just a railroad that could cross Europe. But now, as we've had these discussions, it's clear that China wants to create an Internet of Things platform for digital China. The EU, hopefully, is creating a digital platform for digital Europe and green Europe. And now the discussion is shifting to, why not work together? Why not create out an infrastructure from Shanghai to Ireland, a Eurasia Silk Road over the next 50 years, so that 66% of the human race can work cooperatively in an integrated market, because you have to share. The geopolitics don't work here. Lay out that Internet of Things, and you have to share the energy, the communication, the transport. You have to begin to see how we can work together as a human family. Yes, this sounds, wow, can this happen? Some of you are young enough, you'll see whether this happens or not. But it's a vision for a younger generation. All your young people under 40 are sitting home with mom and dad unemployed, and they're digital, and they're ready for what I've outlined. And every 16-year-old kid can understand everything I said this morning. We need legislators to be able to tell the story, rally the public, build the base for this, work together to create the legislation, because it's going to be so difficult, so challenging, so uphill. But this is why you're in public life. It's not for the money, that's for sure. People go into legislative life to actually serve the common good. The common good now is saving the human race, giving new promise for our younger generation, taking the EU to the next stage of its journey, digital, smart, green Europe. And it's the legislative leaders in this room that will make this happen. Don't lose the opportunity. Don't lose the decade. Thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you.